great honor today to have the privilege of listening to the keynote address by our keynote speaker, Dr. R Balasubramaniyam. If I could request Sir to address the gathering.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಇರುವಂಥ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಚಾರ್ಟರ್ಡ್ ಅಕೌಂಟೆಂಟ್ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಷನ್ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರಾದಂಥ ಶ್ರೀ ಹೆಗಡೆ ಅವರೇ, ಪ್ರೆಸ್ಟೀಜ್ ಗ್ರೂಪಿನ CEO ಆದಂಥ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟ್ ಅವರೇ, ನಡೆದಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪದಾಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳೇ, ಆತ್ಮೀಯರೇ, ಸ್ನೇಹಿತರೆ, ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಯವರು ಯಾವ್ಯಾವ ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೋ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಮಾಹಿತಿಗಳನ್ನು ನಾನು ಹಂಚ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ. ಅವರು ಬಹುಶಃ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ, ಸೈಟ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೊಟ್ಟೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ. ಆದರೆ ಅವರು ಎಲ್ಲ ಥರದ ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಭಾಳ ಸುಂದರವಾಗಿ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮಹತ್ವವಾದ ಕೊಡುಗೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜ ಕಟ್ಟುವುದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪಾತ್ರ, ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಚಾರಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಹೇಳಿ ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಏನು ಮಾತಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಉಳಿದಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೆ. ಆಗ ನನಗೆ ಅನಿಸಿದ್ದು, ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳಿಗೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗೋದೇ ಒಂದು ಶಿಕ್ಷೆ. ಈ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇಗ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಶಿಕ್ಷೆ. ನಾನು ವೆಂಕಟ್ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಬೇಗ ಬಂದವರು, ಅದರಿಂದ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮಾತಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಅವಕಾಶ ಸಿಕ್ತು. ಸುಮಾರು ಜನ ಮಿತ್ರರು ಬಂದು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಥಾನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಅದು ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ವಿಚಾರ ಅಂತ ಭಾವಿಸ್ಬಿಡಬೇಡಿ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರದಲ್ಲಿರೋ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳ ಕೊರತೆಗಳಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವೇ ಕಾರಣ ಅಂತ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರನೇ ಬಂದು ಹಂಚ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಚಾರ್ಟರ್ಡ್ ಅಕೌಂಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಈಗ ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ತಿರೋದೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಒಂದು ಪುಸ್ತಕನೇ ಬರಿಬೋದು. ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೀಶ್ ಸಬರ್ವಾಲ್ ಅವರು ಲೇಬರಲ್ಲಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬರೀತಾ ಹತ್ತತ್ರ 65-69 ಸಾವಿರ ಥರದಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ತಪ್ಪು ಮಾಡಿ ಜೈಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಬರೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಒಂದು ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಬರೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು ಸಂಶೋಧನೆ ಮಾಡಿ. ಪ್ರಾಯಶಃ ಅದೇ ಥರ ನಿಮಗಳಿಗೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ಅದರ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಏನು ಅಂದರೆ, ಲಿಸ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಅ ಲಾಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಚಾಲೆಂಜಸ್ ದಟ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಫೇಸಿಂಗ್ at least gives me an opportunity to share my thoughts and views on what can be done about it. Not that what I can or anybody do about it, but what can we all do about it. And in that context, I would like to frame the next, I hope I have 15 minutes. ಅವ್ರ ಸಮಯನೇ ಹೇಳಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದರಿಂದ 2 ನಿಮಿಷಕ್ಕೂ ಮುಗಿಸ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೋದು ನಾನು. ಬಹುಶಃ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಸೆಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್ ಬಂದಿದ್ದರೂ ಸಹ ಅವರ ಸಮಯವನ್ನು ತೊಗೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೋದು ನಾನು. ಅದರಿಂದ ಹಾಗೆ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಡಿ. 15 ಮಿನಿಟ್ಸ್ ಗ್ಯಾರಂಟಿ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಈಗ. So, okay, I'll definitely stop at that. So for me, I think we are all a privileged generation, and we don't recognize it because we only live through a short 40, 60, 70 years of professional careers. Nowadays, we all retire also early. So our professional lives are not too much for us to compare and say how it is. But you ask any elderly person, he always starts off his life saying, "Naviddaga ashtu chanagittu anta." ಅವಾಗಿದ್ದಾಗಿನ ಜನ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ, ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಭಾಳ ಭ್ರಷ್ಟ ಆಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆಪ್ಪ ಸಮಾಜ, ತುಂಬ ಅಸಹ್ಯ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ನಾನು 5 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಕಾಲ ಸಂತೋಷ್ ಹೆಗಡೆ ಅವರು ಲೋಕಾಯುಕ್ತ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾಗ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಲೋಕಾಯುಕ್ತದಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಜಿಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ದುರ್ಭಾಗ್ಯ ನಂದಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಸೊ ಫ್ರಮ್ ವೆರಿ ಕ್ಲೋಸ್ ಕ್ವಾರ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸೀನ್ ದ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅಟ್ ದಟ್ ಟೈಮ್, ಇಫ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಆಸ್ಕ್ಡ್ ಮೀ, ಐ ವುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸೆಡ್, "Oh my God, we are such a corrupt situation." Today, if you ask some of our friends in the media releases that you see, they say today is the worst. So when exactly is the worst is not the issue, but when can we be the best is the issue that we all need to have in our minds. And I think that change has begun in this country of ours, in this great country of ours. For too long have we believed things are bad. I now believe things can become better, not because somebody out there is going to wave a magic wand and say things will be better. It is because you and I will together make it better. And that's the only way we can make this nation great again. There is just no other way. And I belong, and I have the privilege of working with a person who understands the problems in translating his vision of India into a great country. And the problems he had identified with 7 years of his experience as a Prime Minister was that we have the intent, but we may not have the toolkit, the capacities to translate this intent into real action. And so a couple of years ago, the Honorable Prime Minister thought of something. He said, and nowhere else in the world has this been attempted, and we get to understand this. Many years ago, when the American government tried to do this, President Clinton then called it reinvention of the US government. And no other than his own vice president chaired it, and that committee couldn't do much. It was only a committee, and committees are phenomenally known to write great reports. But here was a situation where understanding that these things cannot be done by words, these things have to be done by actual action. The Honorable Prime Minister conceived a far-reaching, possibly a solution to a lot of problems that this nation could possibly solve, and he called it the Mission Karma Yogi. Many of you may not even know about it, because a lot of us in the Mission Karma Yogi like to work quietly and would like our work to speak for itself maybe a couple of years later, not today. And we are very confident it will. The results we have been seeing. And as part of the Mission Karma Yogi, the heart and soul of Mission Karma Yogi, as the PM calls it, is the Capacity Building Commission. And what do we do? You know, sometimes when we are shortened and said CBC, ಕೆಲ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳು ಇದೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳ ಕಿವಿಗೆ ಬಿ ಸರಿ ಕೇಳಿಸದೆ ಹೋದರೆ CVC ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹಿಂಸೆನೂ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ನಮಗೆ CBC, ವಾಟ್ ಡು ವಿ ಡೂ? ನೀವು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾಗ ವೆಂಕಟ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರು, ಕೆಲವರು ರವಿ ಅವರು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರು, the biggest problem, and all of you face it every day of your professional lives, because you are always told what rules to follow. And what the Prime Minister believes, it is this rule-based thinking is what is holding this nation back. And our mandate, he said, is to move people away from thinking about rules, from a rule-based approach to a role-based approach. We need to understand each of us have a role in building this nation, whether it's a bureaucrat, whether it's a chartered accountant, and help us understand that we can no longer operate with the mindset of a karmachari, in his words, a salaried employee of the government of India. But our mandate is to move them from feeling like a karmachari to behaving like a karma yogi. And that's a huge mandate. And we don't have too many numbers to worry about. As a member HR, I only have to worry about 3.1 million people in the first level. Together, including all the state governments, this country has got close to 3 crore employees working in the different governments. And nearly 2 crores are part of the government of India itself. Huge mandate, if you include everybody else. But we have chosen to include the 3.1 million people. And in that 3.1 million people, most of the time you think it's only the top layers or the Group A officers make a difference. Because you might only interact with your income tax officers or all IRS officers, or maybe the IAS officers in your GSTs and other places sometimes. But they are not the only ones running this country. There's a huge cadre of 3 million people. All of them put together is only 100,000. And Venkat keep pointing out, and sometimes embarrassingly to me, that policy maker anta. The actual people who determine policy in this nation of ours, we have actually mapped it. There are only 550 key people. So if 550 key people can change their opinion about how to build India, imagine what will be the result. So we are working with a lot of data, and things are changing. And I want to share that change with you. And if you don't participate, this change will be only slogans. 3 years later, you'll have somebody else coming here and talking, and we'll all talk about the same thing again. But if what I speak makes sense, and if you feel that you want to participate, I think the change will happen. It will happen faster than ever before. And we'll be the only nation in the world which can then truly say, now we are ready to be a Jagat Guru. Because we would have found a way to a lot of problems the world itself is facing. And what are those national aspirations? What do we do and how do we do it? And where can you participate? We all look at 75 years of history of our independence. We are all celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. And ಈ 75 ವರ್ಷಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಕಲಿಕೆ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ, ಮಾಡದೇ ಇರೋದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. ಭಾಳ ಸರಳವಾಗಿ ಪಾಶ್ಚಿಮಾತ್ಯ ದೇಶಗಳನ್ನು ನಾವು ಟೀಕಿಸ್ಬೋದು. ಇನ್ನೂ ಸರಳವಾಗಿ ಭಾರತಕ್ಕೆ ಗುಲಾಮತೆ ಇತ್ತು, ಹೊರದೇಶದಿಂದ ಬಂದು ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಗುಲಾಮರಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಆದರೆ ಕಳೆದ 75 ವರ್ಷ ಗುಲಾಮತೆ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ದು ಹೊರಗಡೆಯಿಂದವರಲ್ಲ, ಒಳಗಡೆ ಇರೋರಿಂದಲೇ. We were all slaves to our own short petty-mindedness. We were all slaves to our own shortened thinking. We were all slaves to having narrow-minded visions which are driven around just personal growth rather than public growth of this country itself. But that has changed today. I think we should all feel privileged that we are all going to be part of the India's great change story. And what is it that we do? Is we look at all the people of this country, all the 93 ministries of the Government of India, 2,800 institutions under them, and the 800 training institutions under the Capacity Building Commission, including the academies for the IAS, police academies, the income tax academies, all those people who train the people who tell you the rules. And if we can change them, possibly the culture of rules itself will be changed. If we can get them to understand roles of building this nation, you can possibly actually understand why they need you and how you can participate. So for that, you need to understand India. When we got a freedom, in 1947, 1600s, we were the world's largest GDP. I do agree with the Honorable Chief Minister when he says economic growth is not important. I subscribe to the same theory. In fact, that's what I teach in my courses. But then what matters is who makes the economy, and they matter. And we had the people in this country who built a great economy. 38% of the global GDP came from this country of ours. 1600 continuous years we kept growing year after year, decade after decade, century after century. We never had a recession. We had the first documented famine when the British came into India. An artificially created famine because of bad public administration. And we need to learn lessons from that. But I don't want to go into problems. But in 1947, we inherited a nation of bureaucrats. Unfortunately, we're trained in the thinking of regulating Indians to follow the rules set by the British. So let's go back and understand where it all started. We were all trained to be slaves, and if we were not, they were punished. So the Indian civil service, there's a famous joke about them. They were neither Indian nor civil nor were serving. That's what we inherited in 1947, and I don't blame anybody because that's what they were trained for. And you give the nation in their hands, they can't change their training over and ನಿಮ್ಗಳ ಕೈಲಿ ದಿನ ಬಲಗೈಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲ್ಲು ಉಜ್ಜಿದ್ರೆ ನಾಳೆಯಿಂದ ಎಡಗೈಯಲ್ಲಿ ಉಜ್ಜಿದ್ರೆ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಎಡಗೈಯಲ್ಲಿ ಉಜ್ತೀರ ನೋಡ್ತೀನಿ ನಾನು. ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಹುಟ್ಟಿದಾಗಿಂದ ನೀವು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸಗಳನ್ನು ಒಂದೊಂದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟುಬಿಡಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಪಾಪ ಇವ್ರುಗಳೆಲ್ಲ 40-50 ವರ್ಷ ಆಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಅನ್ನೋ ಭ್ರಮೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದವರು ಸಡನ್ನಾಗಿ ದ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ ಸಿಟಿಸನ್ಸ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ. ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ದಮ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ವಿ ಡೂ ದಟ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಡೂ. ಸೊ ವಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ನೇಷನ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಅ ಪ್ರೊವೈಡರ್ ಅಪ್ರೋಚ್. ಮಾಡರ್ನ್ ಬ್ರೆಡ್ಡಿಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು ಏರೋಪ್ಲೇನ್ ನಡೆಸೋ ತನಕ ಭಾರತ ಸರ್ಕಾರವೇ ಮಾಡ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಎಲ್ಲವೂ ಸರ್ಕಾರವೇ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದನ್ನು ನಾವು ತೊಗೊತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ. ನಮಗೂ ಭಾಳ ಅನುಕೂಲ. ಯಾರೋ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ರೆ ದಿನ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಯಾರಾದ್ರು ಅಡುಗೆ ಮಾಡಿ ನನಗೆ ಉಣಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ಬಾಯಿಗೆ ತಂದು ಉಣಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಸಂತೋಷ. ನಾವು ಆ ಥರದ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ 47ನೇ ಇಸ್ವಿಲಿ ಬಂದಂಥವರು, ವಿ ಆರ್ ಆಲ್ ಬ್ರಾಟ್ ಅಪ್ ಇನ್ ಅ ಪ್ರೊವೈಡರ್ ಅಪ್ರೋಚ್. ಸೊ ದ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ವಾಸ್ ಟು ಪ್ರೊವೈಡ್ ಟು ಸಿಟಿಸನ್ಸ್. That is what they were trained in. 1990s, when you became suddenly part of the system, because the economy opened up, privatization, globalization, things started changing rapidly. The government had to move away from being a provider to a provisioner. And overnight, you can't press a button and say the entire bureaucracy will change its skill sets. And today, the Prime Minister keeps talking of Jan Bhagidari, partnerships, citizen participation. He genuinely believes that only citizens and all of us together can make this nation great. And he always says, Team India is not Government of India. Team India is every Indian citizen. And if we can build the capacities of the government system first to understand this and to reciprocate with our citizens with that attitude and mindset, then this nation's team will be so powerful that the change has to happen by itself. And that is what we in the Capacity Building Commission believe that we are set out to do, and we will possibly do it in some time. What are the national aspirations? The first national aspiration, of course, he keeps repeating, is a $5 trillion economy. Not simply a $5 trillion economy, but an economy which is inclusive and equitable. An economy which is compassionate and considerate. An economy which includes every single Indian citizen, the Antyodaya concept of the government. The second is Atmanirbharate. We have to shake off the slavish mindset and believe that everything has to come from the West. Even your own understanding of accounting, if you look at it, we are more comfortable talking about GAAP standards and UK standards. Why not we proudly say our ICA standards are second to none? And I strongly believe so, accounting standards that we have. But it is not about the standards being second to none, but it's about the pride that you all have in our standards that you can make it second to none, and possibly something other countries can emulate. And we should do that. The Atmanirbharate in everything, in our way of thinking, not just in economic production alone. And the third is ease of living. And Venkat said, at the ease of doing business, Khandita ide. But we are all learning how to do it better for you. And what better than understanding the pressure points and the pain points from people who understand the pain every day. You know where the shoe is pinching. The people who make these rules don't completely understand that. Not that they are not well-intentioned, they just don't understand where it pinches. They only know the shoe, and they know how the shoe should be designed, the rules for the making the shoe, but they don't know anything beyond it. They're learning. And I can promise you it's a very healthy bureaucracy which is wanting to actually learn and do better. So when the shoe pinches, please let us know where it is pinching. And maybe we can apply some Vaseline and make it better. It's not easy. I understand you'll have no faith. I can tell you, there's a portal called CP Grams. How many of you use it, I don't know. It's a complaint portal of the citizens. Directly the voice is heard, and I can assure you it's actually seen and addressed. Earlier when it was started, 2 lakh people gave grievances every month. Today 30 lakh people send in their grievances every month, and we have the data. And somebody asked the Honorable Minister then, why is that more people are complaining? He said, absolutely more people are complaining, but more people are complaining because they do it with the faith that my complaint is getting heard and addressed. ಮುಂಚೆ ನೀವು ಕಂಪ್ಲೇಂಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಾಗ ಓದವರೇ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ಓದಿ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಏನಾದರೂ ಮಾಡೋಂಥ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ನಿರ್ಮಾಣ ಆಗಿದೆ. And that is, you have to use it. That is what a citizen participation. Use portals like MyGov. Write to the Honorable Members of Parliament. Write to the Prime Ministers and Chief Ministers. Let them hear your voice. This nation no longer needs to worry about income poverty. If at all we have to worry, it's our voice poverty we have to worry about. And we will be the losers for that. So we look at ease of living. The last man down the street, anything that is done, can it benefit everybody? And ease of doing business is very easy to say. The National Infrastructure Pipeline, $1.3 trillion going to be spent in the next coming 3 years, beginning 6 months ago. Many of you may not follow these numbers. The same time Joe Biden became president, he launched his infrastructure program, stimulus package, $1.4 trillion, just a little more than us. But for 4-year time, in 3 years we want to spend $1.3 trillion. Do you know who the problem is for spending this money? It is the private sector. Venkat will be pleasantly surprised. Capability of spending more than 5,000 crore projects, handling more than 5,000 crore projects, a handful of Indian entrepreneurs. 1.4 billion people, and just 5 companies can manage 5,000 crores and above. Something has to be done. And the private sector has to participate. Without that, Team India can never really achieve what it wants to do. So I think ease of doing business works both sides. Ease of delivering on the business mandated on the private sector also matters. And then we don't forget the social sector. That's why the social stock exchange soon will be announced and will become a reality. The world of non-profits, they're going through a lot of fluctuations. The same laws which affect private sector affect, and I think Suresh will talk about it, and all the FCRA changes. But for every law that comes in, for every 4 examples you can give about where the shoe is pinching, I can tell you what happens when the shoe does not pinch at all. Now I'm on the other side of the fence, and I see the kind of problems that this country is facing, and we need some structures for balancing it out. So the last point that we look at is citizen-centric delivery of goods and services. Things are changing so rapidly. Just last year, direct bank transfer to citizens of India, especially to farmers of India, without even asking for the money they got into their accounts, saved the nation 1.6 lakh crore rupees in corruption and wrong identification of beneficiaries. There's a lot of change happening. And this change, we need to talk with data, not emotionally, but evidentially. And I think who better than chartered accountants to talk with evidence-based data? Because you look at only at data. In fact, you notice ಸಂಖ್ಯೆಗಳು ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ತಲೆ ಸುತ್ತು ಬರುತ್ತೆ. And if you have that kind of data, instead of simply telling whether rules were followed, if you can say and analyze and say what is happening to this nation in every possible way, all the challenges that is happening, and present it to the system that be, there's so much that can happen. So in conclusion, I've gone 16th minute, so pardon me, but in conclusion, I would like to say, we need to work together. Problems, you might create some, the private sector might create some, the government might create some. All of us know that. The easiest answer we have is point a finger and say they have the problem. I did that for 35 years. Being in the NGO sector, I worked with people who did not need chartered accountants, who will never need them because they have no money to report even. The poorest of the poor of this country in terms of income, but the richest of the rich in terms of culture, civilization, and values, the indigenous tribals of this country. I was privileged to live amongst them, live with them, live like them. And I can tell you, every voice matters. And today, if all of us decide that we I used to criticize. I have sued the government. I have sued the state government. I have sued the national government. I've gone to Human Rights Commission. I've been arrested. I've been beaten up. I've been offered the Padma Shri. All this happens in this space. But then, if you're intelligent, you don't take all of that. You take it in the same spirit, whether it is the jail or the awards. But the more important thing is, at that time I thought government is useless, private sectors are all sinners, everybody making money is a ruthless sinner. I'm the only one good, I'm serving the nation. Thank God that lasted only 5-6 years. I can tell you NGOs can never ever supplement or supplant the government. We can at best supplement it. What we need is not saying I am better, you are bad. What we need is we all recognizing each other's strengths, the private sector, the media, the government, the social sector, community and citizens themselves, and academia. All of us coming together, seeing what is good in each other, learning to see what is good, learning to start focusing on the silver lining and not just complaining about the dark clouds. And when we learn to work in synergistic partnerships, real change will happen. And this country, this great Bharat of ours, will be possibly one of the greatest countries in the world. And in Vivekananda's words, he says, I would like to see Bharat Mata sitting on her throne, resplendent in all her glory, and becoming the Jagat Guru of the world. And that is the Jagat Guru we have to create. And that can happen only when a spirit of collaborative partnerships, when a spirit of working together, when a true spirit of Janbhagidari emerges. And I think who better than new chartered accountants who are privileged to be the link between the state and the citizen, because you're in a real sense a link. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕಾನೂನು ನಿಮಗೆ ಚುಚ್ಚಿದಾಗ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕ್ಲೈಂಟ್ಗಳ ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಈ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಹಾಳಾದ ದಿನ ಬದಲಾಯಿಸುತ್ತೆ, ಸರ್ಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ದಿನ ಒಂದು ಹೊರಡಿಸುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಬೈಯೋರು ನೀವೇ. ಅಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಈ ಥರ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರೋದು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋರು ನೀವೇ. Let us not forget, I have done an analysis of GST globally. With all the problems of GST, it is still one of the finest taxation reforms attempted by any country of this size anywhere in the world. Even today, countries like Canada are struggling. So it's very easy to say something is not working. I can tell you for every faceless transaction you might say that something went wrong. I can show you 100 examples of something went right. I can give you 1,000 testimonies of average citizens who say, I never had to bother, I got my tax refund, I never expected it. I can show you 100 examples of some people saying, oh, you are faceless iddaga chanagittu, and you know whom I'm referring to. Because sometimes it's easy for you people also to have a face, because a face is a human being, a face is a person who can carry ethical values, a face is also a person who can convert ethical values into you know what. So it takes two to tango, remember. It takes the corrupt to bribe also. So we need to understand that if we have to change the system, the change, like Gandhi said, we have to be the change we want to see. And let's all together see a great India. Namaste.